Welcome to Synchronicity, another solo cast. I'm putting them out because there's situations in the world that relationships, people I tell about this, who I care about, who hear about it, have a variety of different reactions. And I recognize that these are probably reactions that you could be having or anyone could be having. And I certainly went through too. So I don't want to make it seem like some crazy ass savant here who just like picked this shit. These are all valid questions that people ask. And one of the things that I see keep coming up is when you get upset when someone does something, either in a close relationship or a social group or extending it out into a larger group or even, politically or celebrity, whatever it is, just someone out there in the world and getting triggered by that or upset in either direction. And there is this aspect of righteous anger that is valid in a lot of ways, but the distance between righteous anger and moral outrage that then turns into just anger and bitterness is very small. That's a very small leap. And there's a Neville Goddard quote that I really enjoy, which is, whatever you condemn, you eventually become. And I think that's really important to think about because you want to condemn bad stuff, right? It is bad that this is going on. It is unbelievably horrible that this is going on, right? You can think of some situations where that might theoretically apply. However, you recognize imagination creates reality. You're creating your entire reality at all times. So is everyone else, but you're bouncing your ideas off each other. You're imagining these situations. If you imagine that you want to help in these situations, think about what that would look like. What's the best version of you look like in terms of helping? Let's say you identify, let's talk about homeless people. This is something that a lot of my friends passionately care about. I've always had a strong affinity because when I went through a very intense experience 15 years ago, homeless people would come up to me a lot, and we would have really weird conversations. And I learned a lot about the homeless community in Boston and in DC and all of these places. And you realize there's all these stories and communities, and they're no different than anyone else. And some of the situations, one might say, there, but for the grace of God, go I, right? Well, the good news is that God is our imagination, so we can actually do some pretty powerful stuff in big situations. However, let's be clear, to affect actual change in the world, I do believe we have to have some systems and logistics and organizations in place that can use the energy mechanisms that we're familiar with in this world right now, which is currency and money, and really create structures that are ethical and honorable and have the right people in place to start setting up some systems to alleviate things. One of those ideas, at least that I know I will be pursuing, is related to homelessness and identifying various aspects of mental illness that I think is just an aspect of maybe imagination gone wild, either the person's or someone in their lives. I remember being called crazy multiple times 15 years ago. And granted, I was being pretty Looney Tunes, but I just couldn't communicate exactly what was going on. It was overwhelming. This time around, now that I've kind of locked into this state, there's a sense of equanimity, there's a sense of recognition, especially since I lived 15 years from then, had a lot of different experiences, heard a lot of different perspectives, and I'm now able to communicate it relatively lucidly. But a lot of people can't, and a lot of those people end up disadvantaged and impoverished and, quite frankly, just in really shitty situations. And if you don't know that you can influence reality, move to realities where you can help people like that in a variety of different ways with both internal and external resources, rethink what you're getting angry at. I think it's really good to get angry, but you need a solid plan. You need a solution, because otherwise, think about what you're putting back into your world. It's like a feedback loop. Where else is that energy going to go? Just out in the world? The whole world is you. It's your imagination. What is it? Maybe bump up against someone else? That's no good either. So it's important to think about this stuff when we get really upset and we feel that people are being complacent or not giving a shit about important issues that are important to us. That's totally valid. This is something that I encountered again 15 years ago. Here's a weird fucking story. You want a weird story? I was really fucking out there and I didn't know how to communicate this stuff. And I remember it distinctly. I always think about this because I was not the proper way to be in this situation. I want to make a distinction between what I'm saying and how I approached it back then. So I was at Berkeley. It was in the dorms of Berkeley, Boston Music School, not in California. And I was smoking weed in someone's dorm room, and I started talking about unconditional love or like alternate reality. Who the fuck knows? I was totally looped. It was just a crazy time. And a brother, someone who was in the room had a brother who was in the war. I think it was Afghanistan at the time. And I was essentially saying that doesn't exist. And what I was saying is because I was so caught up in my own world that to me, since I wasn't aware of it, it didn't exist. And I want to make a clear distinction that that is not what I am advocating here. I bear witness. I pay attention to the things that are going on in the world. I do not tune out. But I also recognize that until I'm in the position that I know all of my internal shit is worked out and I have some resources internally and externally to really affect some change, I can't get too caught up in that. But I'm not tuning out. I'm not pretending it doesn't exist. I'm not camel sanding myself. So that's important too. Like, don't mistake taking care of yourself as complacency. And what could be more important than recognizing that your imagination creates reality? Imagination is God, you're God, and you're you. You can choose to move into the best version of yourself. And when we all do that, lo and behold, the world gets much better. So that's happening. That's happening no matter what. And it's not a passive thing. This is the most active and dynamic thing a person can do. I promise you that. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything. I wrote one thing down. Does this make any sense? No, we covered that. We covered that. The last thing I want to talk about is appropriating states. Had a conversation with my dad about this today. I was trying to explain, at least for me financially, what really seemed to click in terms of getting this principle imaginally and relating it to a material thing, in this case, money. So when you're imagining something, you don't want to think of it. In the same way you don't picture it as a movie scene that you're watching, you want to imagine it's from your own perspective in your imaginal act. You want to make sure you're not thinking of something, which is more akin to kind of like a fantasy, and instead are thinking from it as though you are there. And this can also be as simple as saying that if you're really have a weird relationship with money or love, anything, truthfully, you can genuinely imagine a state of wealth or a state of love with your true love. You can do that. That's really something you can do. There's no reason you can't, and you'll know when it clicks because you'll feel it differently. And again, the mantra that I really love is, this is the dream, your imagination is reality. That combined with trying to appropriate a state, essentially a state of wealth, a state of happiness, a state of ecstasy. Ecstasy is a real good one. If you do that, then watch what happens. That's all I'm saying. You'll know when it clicks. You'll see. Don't take my fucking word for it. That'd be so weird. That'd be so weird if you just took my word for it. I mean, I guess it theoretically could work, but do it yourself. Try it and see what happens. And for the people writing in, a lot of the times I'm writing, you got it. And that's what I write back. And I hope that don't think I'm being glib. What I'm writing back is, it's done. Right? Here's the scene I imagine each time someone tells me something, and they've all been genuine and heartfelt, so I don't have to make any distinction. I just imagine getting the email back, the follow-up one, where they say, hey, this is amazing. I can't believe it happened. And they'll thank me. And meanwhile, I'll know it's them. They did it. And then they'll know that. And then it's awesome. And I also promise everyone who's hearing this is a bold claim, but I promise you will get this too. You will get it. It will flip in your mind. There's a podcast called Synchronicity. You'll be led down this little wormhole. It happened to me. It's my fucking podcast. It happened to me. You'll hear this imagining stuff. Maybe you bat it around for a little bit. Maybe you come back to it. Maybe you just get it. Then all of a sudden your world flips upside down. And then when that happens, trust me, we will all be in a place. I'm trying to build a little arc here. I'm building a little arc here we're going to have some stuff we can do to really do what we know we need to do to make the world a better place, ecologically, sociologically, just for people, for animals, for everything. Let's do a little bit better. It's not that hard. Imagine yourself doing better. It's that simple. And don't forget the operative principle here. It's love. It sustains everything. It's the best thing. It's the coolest. It really is a real thing. It's not made up. When you experience it and experience it again and again and recognize you can kind of live in it and share it with whoever you want, whenever you want. Maybe the only thing holding you back is your reactions to the external world, which is just you pushed out. You'll be pretty happy though, because it's love. Like, what's better than that? What's better than the end of the story being love? What, you want to be alone and in misery? You can imagine that, I guess, but it's love. Okay. That's it. I think it's my birthday tomorrow. I had to get that in there. I got to have those positive energy come back. My ego is not gone. Let's be honest here. I did have something related to the ego. You want to hear how weird this imagination stuff gets? So let's say things just come to you sometimes when you're imagining. You might have a vision, right? This happened to me, I want to say 10, maybe 11 days ago. I was trying to imagine something, and all of a sudden I'm standing in this like dark wood, and it's like there's a fire in the middle, I think, and then there's this wolf, and it's just like walking around and snarling, and normally I'd be fucking terrified of a wolf. It's scary. But I recognized it, and I said, come here, and it was growling and snarling at me, and then it came closer, and then it sat next to me. I told it to sit, and I started petting it, and then we just started cuddling, and I realized, like, this is my ego. Like, this is exactly what represents my ego. It's just like a knowing thing. It's so fucking weird when you get the vision. It's weird. But I knew it was my ego. And what this shows me is, like, your ego isn't a bad guy. It's just on the defensive. It doesn't want you to get hurt. It doesn't want you to be vulnerable because it doesn't want you to get hurt. So it doesn't want you to accept that you're literally responsible for everything in your life, because that's a big thing to take on if you're not ready for it, truthfully. So yeah, I had that thing. That was pretty cool. Anyway, shit is cool. Everything's going to be awesome. Don't worry about it. I promise you. It really will. That's it. I will see you officially